Hey there, Commercial Construction Coffee Talk fans. Thanks for chiming in. My name's David Corson. I'm your host. I'm also the publisher and editor of Commercial Construction and Renovation Magazine. This is what it used to look like when we were in print. This was the last issue I printed in August of 2021. Um, we had the Vice President of Operations Services for White Castle Systems, Mike Guinan. This is the biggest facility they ever built, but after it, we went digital 100%. Let's see. This was 148 pages. Let's see where I was back here. I was in Memphis at Elvis, looking at Graceland. We did an event there. It was awesome. If you haven't been in Graceland in a long time, it's not just a little house and an airplane. They built an amphitheater and all these venues with all these costumes and cars. I mean, you could spend days out there and not see everything. But anyway, it's always nice to hold the magazine in my hands. I'm still old school, but we went digital and don't miss the printer, don't miss the post office. We just went over 40 million interactions on our website for this year. And thank you to everybody out there that finds us on the web, consuming our content. Couldn't have done it without you. You're gold in my eyes, and hopefully, maybe next year we'll go over 50 million. It's the sky's the limit. There's 8 billion people on the wild wild web, and that grows every day too. And but like I said, I couldn't have done it without you. So thank you so much. I am grateful for you for finding me out there on the web. But talk about being grateful. Look, it's the holiday season. You got a couple more days of the last really week of work in the country. Next week's a wash. If you're working on Monday or Christmas Eve on Tuesday, it's not many people are going to be around. They're going to be taken off, and then some people will come back for New Year's week. But when the holiday ends, starts in the middle of the week, people are just going to take off those 2 weeks. So I'm trying to make the best of it. And right after I get done with this, I got to run up to my house and deal with a couple subs and look at my metal roof and some gas lines they put in, and we're still rocking. We're going to rock and roll through the next couple of weeks. Insulation, sheetrock, and some other things, and then I'm going to dig my hole hopefully for my pool before the end of the year. Get the excavator out there and. But I'm going to be busy. So, but if you're on vacation, you enjoy it. You earned it. It's the end of the year, and we're all going to close out 2024 on a positive mode, strong with momentum. And 2025, all I can say is it's going to be a crazy year. So button your belt up. Never a dull moment every day. But it just the whole country is I'm excited for 2025. I'm definitely bullish, and I'm looking for an unbelievable year. So today I've got a nice gentleman up in the Big Apple. His name is Kevin Kennon, and he's the founder and CEO of Beyond Zero DDC Inc. Kevin, say hello to our listeners out there on Commercial Construction Coffee Talk.
Hi, David. Thank you for having me on, and thank you for everybody's listening. Um,
Absolutely, absolutely. I get so many, people reach out, they want to be on the show and so forth. And I looked at your resume and your publicist had a really nice PR piece. I was like, yeah, man, we got to have this person on here. This guy's an innovator. He's done a ton of projects, and so we're honored to have you as our guest. And the way it's going to work is we're going to do it in three parts. You're going to tell your story, where you grew up, where you went to school, kids, whatever, how you ended up where you are today. Then we'll transition into lessons learned over the last 4 years of the roller coaster that we've all been on, and any cool projects or trends that you see coming into 2025 and beyond. And then we'll finish up with your contact info and then one positive thought or phrase. So, with that, the floor is yours. Tell us your story.
Great. Well, let's see. I grew up in California, out just outside of Los Angeles, a place called Palos Verdes. And what was interesting was I lived in a very isolated community within Palos Verdes. That it was almost like the land that time forgot it. You went into this place. It was very wooded, heavily wooded. It had mostly eucalyptus and pepper trees. Um, and the area had been designated a slide zone, so they put a moratorium on building there. And when we bought our house there, it was 40 years old, which is in Southern California, like ancient. So that's but it was a Japanese house. It was beautifully landscaped in this super idyllic place. And since there was a moratorium on it, it hadn't changed at all until recently when this whole area was hit by heavy rains in Southern California and created a slide in this zone. So my entire neighborhood is literally sliding off into the ocean at the rate of 6 inches per week. They've been trying to remediate this and dig wells to try and sort of take away some of the pressure coming in from the aquifer. But it's seems to be a rearguard battle at this point. And it's an incredible foundation. It just reminds you so much of even the things we thought were sort of would last forever. Because of many different types of forces that they could be gone in an instant. So it's really colored a lot. That event, obviously, the roller coaster I think you referred to, and even before the roller coaster, we were going through a series of shocks just as I became I was the youngest partner at a firm called Cohn Pedersen Fox in New York. But just as I sort of came of that age, and I'd already done a number of significant buildings for clients like Morgan Stanley, JP Morgan, the Rockefeller Development Group. People like this just in the city alone.
Hmm.
Um, and, uh, uh, and and so I had this incredible background in doing these highly complex buildings, mostly urban structures, but increasingly all over the world. Uh, and then an event like 9/11 happens, and I just happen to live a few blocks away, and your entire world and perspective, changes after that. And I was fortunate enough to be have been on the site of Ground Zero within maybe a week after it happened. It was a horrific. I would never want to experience that again. You were immediately in a war zone, and it was clear, what this had been incredible violence. And
Well,
it was sad.
I was in New York on 9/11. I flew up the night before. I was doing a show in Javits,
Yeah,
and the guy flew into Newark, and I had the car service pick me up. I was
yeah,
working for Nielsen at the time,
yeah,
and I told the guy, go to the lane, go through the tunnel. So he went through the Holland tunnel. I'm like, no, 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 no. Okay, whatever. And then so I saw the towers. And that
yeah,
morning, woke up, had a
yeah,
couple reps with me, and we were going to go down and get set up for the show. Had breakfast. First plane hit a little plane. They didn't know what it was, and then anyway, we went back to the hotel, and the hotel was like, "Hey, no one's going anywhere. You can't get off the island. Just go back." And it was a beautiful day in New York. I mean, just
Oh,
beautiful day.
everybody remembers it. Yeah, yeah. If
And
you're
so
here, yeah,
yeah, so I was there, but I ended up. Took me a couple hours to get, probably about 4 hours to get to my office. But once I got through to my office, I said, get me a rental car, rent me a rental car.
yeah,
So the following day, I stood in line. I swear it was probably 2 miles. I think I got the last car in Manhattan,
yeah.
and I drove back to Atlanta and
Uh-huh.
one of my reps. But this story is awesome. On my way, I went from New York to Raleigh. That's where we stopped. And then I went Raleigh to Atlanta. But when we were coming into Raleigh, there was a New York cabbie going south on I-95 with two guys in the back seat. And I remember
Yeah,
we looked over to them. They were like, "Yeah, we're getting home." And I'll remember that the rest of that cabbie made a good fare. That's all I got to
yeah,
say,
yeah, yeah. That's right.
you know. But it
It
was
said
the
something.
longest day of my life.
Yeah,
I saw the tower go down. I mean, every channel had it,
yeah.
and
Oh,
uh,
yeah.
it was just. And I grew up in the city. I went to PS 158. My
Yeah,
parents were
yeah,
upholstery. And I grew up there. I was in the tower plenty of times,
yeah,
and but I flew back a month later. And I
yeah,
went down to ground zero, and
yeah,
people can't imagine. You could see the
yeah.
dust cloud on all the buildings of
Right,
how far it went, but
right.
you can't imagine how large of an area that was. And
Oh,
Nielsen
yeah,
had just bought an old Montgomery Ward's building for their headquarters,
right.
and some of the debris uh, had knocked the some holes in the side of the building, and you could see the computer room or whatever. But Uh, I mean, it was, you know, like I said, I'll remember that day the rest. But those cab, two guys in the cab, that I'll
Yeah.
just remember that the rest of my life.
Yeah. Well, that's both those stories, which are fabulous story. I mean, and it's what's interesting about that day is that, and I talk about this with a lot of people, um, is how everybody remembers the day, the weather of the day, and how absolutely gorgeous it was. Typically for me, I think it's the best month of the year anyway,
Oh yeah.
September. And Anyway, but the other thing about the seeing the two guys in the cab, how surreal that must have been, right? You know, you're in the middle of North Carolina, whatever, and there's guys going, and then but then also your personal journey down to ground zero, and that you felt you needed to see this, to understand it. You're somebody who's involved in sort of building things. I think in particular has to kind of come to grip at it, like how big of a problem, do we have here? Um, but so what happened was, uh, right after 9/11, my wife and I walked down to see for ourselves, and it was still pretty raw. I mean, it was you could still see lots of debris, you know, kind of. So it was is you didn't it didn't take much to understand that this was a sacred site. And but I guess because people were so curious, people were clamoring around all the perimeter to try to. They're climbing up on fences, trying to rip through barriers, just to even get a peek. And but it was kind of pandemonium. And then to add to the sort of mawkishness of it was people hawking gear, souvenirs from World Trade Center. And I was struck that something had to be done that was a little more dignified, which would allow people to witness what had happened. I think that's important for some people, and it also helps them come to terms with maybe what's going on. So I designed a temporary viewing platform, and I kind of engaged some fellow architects in this. We sort of collaborated on the how we're actually going to do this, and we managed to get into the city. And then Mayor Giuliani liked the idea, and he said, "Fine, if you can find the money to do it, go ahead. But we want you to do it here, which is right next to the chapel, uh, St. Paul's, and which is the place around Ground Zero that had been completely unscathed. It was surrounded by these 400-year-old elm trees, which are gigantic, and a small cemetery in the back, also completely unscathed. Not one bit of debris fell into this one area. It's uh, always been miraculous. And we located this simple, made out of plywood and planks, and New York City scaffolding. So allowed people to sort of gently walk up into this area and be about 20 feet above the air, the ground, and look into um, ground zero. But what was so unexpected was that once you elevated into that space, and you had lots of people, there was lines around the block, to get into this. But once you got up onto that platform, it was absolutely quiet and still. And for whatever reason, the acoustics or something, you couldn't hear any, or barely hear any work being done. But you did hear the sort of whispering in the trees, and it was an extraordinarily tranquil thing. So I don't know why I'm getting so
Well,
deep into
here's something about,
one project.
the fence, the perimeter fence that went around ground zero.
No.
it had a blue tarp on there, and they had the little holes so
Right.
the wind could blow through it. So when
Right.
we went down there, you couldn't get all the way down. They had to take the subway stop before, and then we had to walk down. But we got up to the fence and we looked through the little slots that they had cut for the blue tarp.
Yeah.
I was blown away
Yeah.
at just the sheer magnitude of
Yeah.
how how large of an area. I mean, I knew what it was because I grew up there, but
Yeah.
it really didn't hit home until you actually saw
Exactly.
just all the debris, but just the magnitude of what
Right.
happened.
Right.
And I wish I would have known about the platform. I would have loved, but
Yeah.
the thing about the tranquil thing, um, that night we ended up in a bar to have dinner,
Uh,
and Bush came on, and the whole bar went completely silent,
yeah.
and you
Yeah.
could hear a pin drop in there.
Yeah.
And later, after we left, I'm sitting on 8th Avenue. We were at like 55th and 8th at the Sheraton, I think it was called at that
Uh,
time. Anyway, I'm looking down at Times Square and all that, and like there's no cars on the street, only a
uh,
couple of emergency vehicles. And I'm standing in the middle of the street looking down, talking to my wife. I'm like,
yeah.
you can't imagine what the city looks like right now. It's like a
Yeah.
ghost town.
Right. 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 Yeah.
And it and like I said, the next day I stood in line, but
Yeah.
really I actually I flew back a month later just because I had to conduct business and I wasn't worried about flying. I just got on a
Yeah.
plane, but my aim was to get down there so I could actually see it, and it really was tranquil is such or surreal and tranquil are great adjectives of what that whole area was like. I mean,
Yeah. That was, and that you could never get that if you just saw a video of it, for example.
no.
You know,
Mm-mm.
you had to, there's something about experiencing that, um, yeah, experiencing a moment of history. It's hard. Most historical events happen in you don't really know they've happened until long after. Oh, that's where we were going.
Did you have to get a permit to build that stand, or did you guys just build it?
Oh, well, so here's the remarkable thing. It was like, having
I mean,
gone
it's New
through,
York City. Come on, nothing happens without any
yeah,
paper, right?
I spend a great time going through the various agencies or having to plan, for the various inspections and permitting on any project. But it was what was one of the great things about it is because we actually got to the mayor first and he greenlit it and he put us under the wing of the emergency management service. A guy named Richie Scherer was a terrific guy, the guy who was really the unsung hero of all of those first responder efforts post the destruction. Uh, the Anyway, we sailed through every single agency lickety split. It really felt like the you got lucky one day and you got into the right subway cab, which magically became an express and went from
Yeah.
until you're a very long destination far away. It was so you got to speed through the process, and it was great. It was terrific. Yeah, every agency had their little two bits in there. The building department, made us redesign parts of it. So, but
Well,
anyway,
like I said, because when you get down to the fence, you could only look through the fence, but if you were
yeah,
above it, you probably had such
yeah,
a whole different perspective I mean, I could see through the little hole in the fence, and
yeah,
I kind of knew, I knew how big it was, but it really put
yeah,
it in perspective. But being able to see it, that must have been
right,
unbelievable. I mean,
right.
what an experience it must have been.
Well, and so the what's it's an interesting uh, corollary to this story was in about a year later after we put up the viewing platform, and it was always meant to be temporary, so it was there for about 9 months, and they took it down. They announced a competition to design the World Trade Center, and it was international competition, and they had I think there was over 1,000 entries all from all over the world, serious entries to do this. And I had put together a group of friends. They were all our friends, my contemporaries. We were all the sort of young Turks, and it was a group that consisted of people from all over the world. It was of London and Amsterdam and Persia and Japan and so even across the U.S. from Los Angeles and New York and anyway, and we it was this very cool group, and we put this kind of if you remember the United Colors of Benetton ads where they had people in different colors, so we put that in, and we were selected. So we were one of five selected to do the design of the World Trade Center
Oh,
competition,
wow.
and I have to say that was for me. It was completely unpaid. We were donating all of our time to do this, and it was at a very high level, and we had a blast. It was really a very creative time, very interesting time, and it was interesting to feel like you were contributing at least to the discussion of what was going on there. Our scheme was very visionary, very innovative, maybe a little too much so. But we did, even though we didn't win, clearly, we were selected for the permanent collection, Museum of Modern Art. So that's right now. That's as close as you're ever going to find to that project is a 12-foot tall model that's in the permanent collection at MoMA.
So carrying on, you're an architect. Talk about, how you got to where you were today.
Yeah, so actually, right now I'm more of a developer than an architect, and I started a development company called Beyond Zero, and I started it during the roller coaster, um, and because I really started to think about what were the kind of projects that I wanted to do at this point in my career. I really have been very fortunate in my career to have done quite a lot. And so there's two things that the reasons I got into development. I had developed a project in New York a while back. It was the original American Express building. It was built in 1846. And American Express was like the Pony Express. And so this particular building, which is in Tribeca, the ground floor was for horses of stables, and then the offices were above that. And we took that building. It had become the studio for the sculptor Alexander Calder. Then it became a very hip nightclub, but it was in complete disarray. But we anyway took the building as a shell and we kind of repurposed it and put in about 25 ultra luxury condominiums, and anyone who's put money into that project made a lot of money. Uh, but anyway, so I got very interested in doing two things in the city. I'm super interested in this idea of uh, let's find building stock and let's not, you know, just completely demolish it. Let's see what we can do to convert it, and to convert it not just simply. There's a lot of talk about office to residential conversions, but not just simply office or residential, but maybe there's ways in which we can create a more diversified product within a 1970 office building in New York City, and really see if we can maximize its use and maximize how it's put together. So we that's one of the types of projects we're doing. Beyond Zero is involved in. Obviously, Beyond Zero it has a clear sustainable mandate, but we're also looking at doing very extremely remote, ultra luxury um, resorts. But the resorts are also set up to be sort of living laboratory for technology. So, and green technology and asset management technology, and so it's a kind of a resort think tank, um, where and we locate these uh, all over in different remote places, usually near uh, places of activity, whether that's the mountains or the beaches or something. And the model for this is actually uh, that what we found in our research is that a lot of people, when they travel, want to come together, to be together. It's going back to the same impulse of building the platform. People need to congregate and bear witness to, especially specifically, um, places that are fragile, that are somehow on the edge of catastrophe, and that's and that can be a very healing spiritual experience. So it's not only obviously something horrific like 9/11, but it's also being at the extremes of climate and land, and understanding, the forces that are at play, which are much stronger than any of us. And yet it until you encounter it face to face, it's hard to really understand how those forces are at work.
Well, I'll tell you, being that in that developer side and right now occupancy rates in all the big cities, they're down.
Yeah,
And the person that comes up with the right model, whether it's turning them into apartments or making them into order, but that's that person's going to make $1 trillion. Whoever comes up with the right model to
yeah,
take, because we don't need more office space,
no,
right now, and
no,
that's the biggest thing. When the roller coaster started, things opened up. People wanted to go to sports games. They wanted to go to the beach. They wanted to go to concerts. They wanted to go out to Central Park or what have you. But they didn't want to go back to the office because they
right,
proved themselves. So if you
right,
were a business owner, you're like, well, do I downsize? Do I
right,
keep this? Do I make it hybrid? Do I make them
yeah,
come in a couple days a week? Do I let them, at home? So I had all of these different conversations over the last 3 or 4 years. But now, we're out of the tunnel. There's still some, potholes and
yeah.
obstacles that you're just going to deal with them anyway,
That's
regardless.
what,
But
yeah,
that is the biggest issue I think right now
yeah,
is how do you manage your team or your personnel as
yeah.
well as try to get that space filled with something that's positive for the whole area. You know where I'm coming from, right?
Yeah, no, yeah, no, I think that's and I think that's why I like a kind of ground up approach to just to, the I like to think of what I'm doing right now as very open ended, and we're really in as much a kind of listening period, because talking to anybody, frankly, but really talking to people who know about how the complexity of putting the simplest thing together. I mean, it's and not and how you need people with experience, and I don't mean just experience in years. I mean, you can learn a lot if you're on, frankly, a project that fails. You learn more necessarily than the ones that succeed, because the success blinds you sometimes to or you were elements that could have become a really big problem. You didn't, it's kind of gets tamped down in the euphoria of like, oh well, we managed to make this work.
Well, people don't
Um,
realize you go into an office. They might have a ladies and a men's room. They might have a couple of toilets in there. They don't have
right.
toilets. You can put all the apartments you want, but they don't have the plumbing in there. And
Yeah,
depending
right.
how old the building is and how it was built, where
Yeah.
does that's like the biggest thing. If you could get plumbing and all that, you could probably turn them into to apartment or
You're absolutely right. It's not only that, but when you're talking about buildings in New York, in during certain periods of time, they come in with a lot of misconceptions about how we that aren't they don't necessarily translate very well into certainly it's easier to turn them into rentals. It's much more difficult to turn them into condominiums.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we this is a really bad cycle we have right now. I saw a statistic that the just yesterday that the median household income to rent is the median to rent household is a net worth of like $11,000, and the median household income to buy is $400,000.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And that's doubled over the last couple, like the last 4 or 5 years. I mean, it's
That's
insane.
that's an awesome spread. I mean, that's you're basically saying you're and most people who are renting, the rental income is simply just the recurring charge. Um, so it's not something that's, if anything, it's a recurring charge, and then it keeps going up.
Hmm.
Um, the so this is something has to, you know, give. And I don't think the answer is necessarily we got to build a lot more. I think we just have to build smarter, and we do have to find a way to make it work, because you're the points that you're making, and this is what I tell a lot of people, especially in New York. There seems to be a bit of a frenzy right now of people talking about and thinking about office conversions to housing. And I think a lot of people think, oh, well, I'm going to take this building in the, I don't know, 30s somewhere, and uh, yeah, it was built in 1972, and those weren't great era office buildings. Those are all now Class B, Class C office buildings, so they're not necessarily easy to convert. Um, but uh, it, it's surprising how, if they were built um, out of concrete, in particular, uh, they the opportunities for making changes actually, I think are easier, um, just because concrete tends to the the structural bay for concrete is less than for steel. And also, concrete buildings just make better apartments. I think we know that now too. So, the issue there is how readily is it to, say, take off a curtain wall, push it back and have it, say, become terraces. It's a tricky thing at every level, but I know I have been able to pull it off. And what I'm looking for right now in that is, again, something where I can really exceed the value proposition as most people would look at it. They might say, "Oh, there's nothing to see here." But I think I'm with my background, I feel I can look at properties and evaluate properties in a way that I think very few people can, especially in New York. I know it so well.
I like, architects, builders, just people in that reuse
Yeah,
phase that will leave the old, like old architecture stuff that they just don't do these days, and then put that modern flair in there so they can mix the old with the new. I think that is the coolest stuff that
yeah,
you can do. Whether
yeah,
it's, reuse, or if it's a craft brewery, or,
yeah,
cannabis shop, retail, hotel, whatever. But the people that can leave, we did an event, where was it? It was up in Buffalo. I think it was a Hyatt. It was right downtown, but it used to be an old post office. So
right.
they left all the old post office slots where you drop your
Yeah,
mail and it goes all the
yeah,
way down. And they had
yeah.
all the cool, but then they had all the modern looks to give you that feel of, wow, this is a really cool hotel. I like that.
You like that?
Nothing
Yeah,
against
yeah.
the newer buildings that are, brand new. They're
No,
beautiful.
no,
But I'm
yeah,
I'm 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 kind of old school,
Yeah.
And the reason
You
is,
know, I think a lot of people are. I mean, and it's not really even, I think, aesthetic thing. I mean, you can make it an aesthetic thing argument, but I think it's just that, if you grew up in an area or you spent, say, 20 years someplace, that's a heck of a long time. And you probably like it the way it was when you bought there. I mean, there's something about it. And of course, you don't want to see it change, and then you always feel like, well, didn't we get gypped out of this, because before these were nice mom and pop shops, and you probably know them as much from the people who occupied it. But yeah, no, I think I just don't think it always makes sense uh to just tear shit down and put stuff up.
yeah,
uh I do think it does. I think I think it's not as easy as people think it is, but if you really look at it, I'm giving something back to my neighborhood, or my area. I'm actually doing something good here because I'm preserving and conserving uh, something of value to that culture, that people who live there. Um, I think I think a lot of people feel really good about that. It's a much, uh, when I've been in those kinds of projects, there tends to be a lot less resistance than
yeah,
it's if I'm where even if the lot had been empty, forever. People
yeah.
like their empty lots.
Yeah, yeah. My family's been in construction since 1888. We're in steel, we're in demolition recycling. So we were in
Yeah,
sustainability before sustainability was even a
yeah,
word.
sure. I
So
bet.
I had, as a grandson, I had to work
The
my mom,
recycling
I was from New
unit.
York, my mom's
Yeah,
from Philly. So
yeah,
I had to work when I got my license at 16. I had to work in the scrapyard. All the
yeah,
grandsons, you had to work,
yeah,
and I burnt steel, I shoveled, asbestos, I laid I mean, I did all that, but it was all about recycling. I mean, my grandfather's in World War II. He was a combat engineer underneath Patton. He rebuilt all of Europe when the Allies bombed all the bridges. He rebuilt all that stuff. But we have old Super 8 video of all the World II, like the Jeeps and the tanks coming into the scrapyard. And so I kind of have that historical mindset.
yeah,
And I just do, reusing
yeah,
stuff. Another people's junk is another person's gold. That's kind of the
yeah,
mindset that I have. And
yeah,
it's the same thing with construction today. I like having the old look with the new and
yeah,
merge them. And there's a medium, it might not be 50-50, but depending on the project. But I think that if you maintain that, because the way that they built stuff, it was built to last. Today, things aren't built to last as long.
yeah,
Um, and I mean, there's buildings that are standing there. There are hundreds and hundreds, and you know, it's just amazing what you can
yeah,
see. Like I'm down here in George's 92. You get out in the woods here. There's still barns that are built way, way back when. They're still standing here today, right?
yeah. Right, 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 right. And they're standing there because people learned the craft, and they it was part of their education. It was foundational to who they are, who they were, and that craftsmanship and care, I think, translates into durability, and certainly it feels and looks more authentic because it
Mhm.
is. It has that authenticity. You can tell that people, not to over dramatize it, but bled for putting stuff together. Anybody's tried to do anything like that, it's very difficult.
So,
It's
so besides, reusing old buildings and merging it with the new, what other trends do you see as far as, as we end 2024 and go into 2025 and beyond? What other trends do you kind of see that maybe people should be on the lookout? Whether they're in that new or reuse or
I'll
even
tell
the
you what I'll say. I'll give you a trend I see, or maybe an inflection point for architecture right now. Um, I think the architecture is a very worn out model that doesn't work, I think, in with today's technology. We're, you know, the prior to the events of the past few years, you would certainly have Zoom calls or WebEx, and I did a number of projects where I had some people in some place, another place, another place, and you would do those, but it wasn't. It was still odd. And I think people tended to do them mainly as almost like PowerPoints, and you would kind of mark up the screen and things like that. It wasn't as much about the human interaction. But as we got more and more used to interacting with people and interacting people from, oh my gosh, halfway around the world, or, in completely different cultures. And all of a sudden, our world, I think, has become smaller through mediums like the one that you and are sharing right now. So it occurs to me that the way in which architects structure their services are really have to change. One of the reasons I'm trying to do this development country is I want to be able to hire other architects. I'm also a designer, so it's not like I'm disinterested, but I have a different company that does design work. But my point is I think that there's uh, a different paradigm for young talented architects, which is to go work for a few years with somebody you really admire, learn as much as you can, and then go as soon as you can go off on your own, and just go off and take your skills and develop those skills. And then, and I want to be somebody, I know a lot of people like this. I'm encouraging younger people to break away from the traditional structures and, and then people like me, if I need somebody to do something really interesting as a component of a building, or even as you're talking about a campus, an entire building. And I like, what they've done, and they're interesting to work with. Why not just bring them in to the process, give them all the credit in the world for what they do. I think that's important. And just kind of spread the wealth a little bit. You know what I mean? It's like with the biggest mythology in my business is that somehow there's one person who does everything. And of course, that's complete BS, right? To build something, anything, it takes thousands, hundreds, and sometimes thousands of people, to accomplish that task, and all of them are vested in, hopefully having some authorship in how that comes into being. So and we have to get into a place where everybody has value who put something together. It's not just and find a way to recognize them. And I do think we have a more democratized way of doing that. And the audience may not be, super huge for that, but at least it's significant, so that people could be watching your show and all of a sudden seeing that their uncle or their grandmother or whomever, cousin 3 or 4 times removed, it doesn't matter. They could see their name, say the family name, and recognize that somebody that within their orbit has actually contributed to this thing. I liked a lot of the coverage they did of the restoration of Notre Dame, because they did just that. There's a lot of interviews with people who were crafting gargoyles, know,
Yeah.
and how wild is that? That there would be um, availability, that high level of craftsmanship.
I think the coolest thing is like right now, I'm just building my little empty nester house up on the lake.
Yeah,
Anyway, I can say I built that, but all
yeah,
the subs that worked with me, they
yeah,
too can say, "Hey, man, I just worked. This was their first house build. I helped them build that. That this is what it looked like before. This is what it looked like now, and as a finished product." And I think that's one of the coolest things if you're with your kids. Hey, man, I built that, you
right.
know, and it was just a piece of dirt.
Yeah,
And now look at it. I think that is one of the most satisfying thing because you can't do everything yourself. I mean, I'm not up there swinging sledgehammers or whatever. But look, I'm working on this fill sense. I'm trying to keep my site clean. I'm doing this and that, but there are people that you hire good people that know what they're doing, but they too have pride in it because not only do they want to get rehired by you, but also that they want to use a referral and say, yeah. I built that. Here's what I did, and blah blah blah. And
sure.
I think that's a really cool way to run your business, knowing where your architecture, now you're in this development side. And
Yeah.
nothing like working for yourself and being an entrepreneur, rolling the dice. When I left Nielsen in 2001, everybody told me, my parents, don't leave. You can retire there, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, no, no,
No,
I'm gonna do it. And I'm still standing today, 20, almost 25 years later. So,
no.
but you gotta have that fire inside. You gotta have that get her done attitude, and you
Right,
gotta have your blinders on. But you also
right,
have to know that you're gonna make mistakes.
right.
You're not gonna lose. You're gonna learn. Because if you're not
Yeah,
making mistakes, you're not working hard enough, in my opinion.
right. Well, I have an architecture company as well, uh, that's that's 25 years, and um, but it's very different when you're working for somebody else, a client in particular, and your responsibility is to them, and to make sure that um, they get the design that they paid for. Uh, and unfortunately, too many people, my peers, I think, they have a tendency to overpromise and underdeliver. And part of it is because there's only so much anybody can control, in this. It does require, I think, it works best when everybody feels like they trust everybody and that everybody's in this together. And the the monster to slay is the project itself, not each other.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and that's one of the things I fortunately I haven't been involved directly in adversarial construction project in many years. But when I first got into it, that was kind of standard
Hmm.
way people did stuff, right? Um, but uh, but I don't know, so I guess my point is that with technology, with I think opportunities out there for younger talents, you can create, what I call project-based offices. So, you really, and it's easier to do in development because I'm controlling the money.
Hmm.
Um, the, but but certainly it's a model I think is uh, worth exploring, because it theoretically should, if it's done right and you pull the right people together at the right time, and you increasingly you're going to have data which is going to be able to do that sort of um, vetting for you. But at the end of the day, it all comes down to people, and you people who I think feel like they have your back, and it's not just about them.
Yeah. So,
Generally,
so, so if you're out there
yeah.
and you're thinking about doing a reuse project, or you got a piece of dirt and you're looking for a developer with, with an architecture, background and so forth, if someone wanted to, bounce some questions off you or talk about some of your previous projects or how you go about finding these individuals that are out there that, that want to become maybe on that entrepreneurial spirit, how would someone reach out and contact you?
Easiest would be email. So it's Kevin, Kevin, at bz dash ddc.com. So that's I don't know, bingo delta dash sorry bingo zero dash delta delta charlie.com.
And I know you're on LinkedIn because I looked you up before we got on. So I know you're on LinkedIn too. So you can find Kevin there as well. You can message him as well. And if listen, if you've got a project and maybe you're stumped and you're looking for some inspiration or whatever, hey, this gentleman's been around a while. So he's only 26, but he's been around a while. And
But yeah, just LinkedIn. You can find me on Paul Kevin Kennon LinkedIn.
all right,
Uh,
awesome. Listen, if anyone wants to reach me, I'm at David C at ccr-mag.com. And listen, Kevin got on here. His publicist sent me a PR piece. I liked it. That's how I got on here. And look, very tough to get in the magazine, but we look at everything. It could be a new product release. It could be an anniversary announcement. It could be a charity golf tournament that you're running. We look at everything. And one of the things as the roller coasters happen. We put other content up there that might be applicable. Hey, how to buy the right insurance or how to buy the right tires for your truck that's going to be on the site. Basically all construction. But we have some of these other tangible items because one of the things I found out is a lot of people found out that all work and no play makes Johnny a dull boy from The Shining way back when. But
yeah.
the bottom line is that you can't work all the time. You got to have some relaxation and you got to enjoy life because life goes quick and you only got one. You got to make the best of it and make the best use of your time.
Your family is number one.
Yeah, absolutely. Family, friends, and like I said, send it to us. Don't. I always tell people it's like playing the lottery. If you don't buy a ticket, you can't win. If you don't send me something, I can't post it. And believe me, we've got very tough to get in the magazine, but we post all day long on all the different platforms, social media, and all that stuff. And we look at everything. Our turnaround time's about 48 hours or so. We send the URL. We share it. It's good for your SEO. That's your search engine optimization. That's how Google finds you on the web. And it's a win-win. So if you've got something really cool or let us judge it, send it to me and we'll take care of it. So, Kevin, as we finish up here, it's the end of the year. We got 2 more weeks. 2024 is over. 2025 is coming up. What would be your positive thought that you'd like to leave with our listeners as we finish up?
Um, yeah, I am very optimistic about this next year. I think there's a lot of conditions that are going to be happening here. I mean, just take New York City. It's actually been in a pretty bad place for a very long time. It's really been very little action. There seems to be, I think, with interest rates coming down, I think at least now the election's over, so there's not that instability anymore. I think you're going to get a lot of foreign investment for all kinds of reasons in here, and I really think this both both of these types of projects we're looking at are really going to make a difference in at least our our trajectory. And so I would, I love talking to people. I really want to know as much about, your ideas, how we could partner, um, and at all levels. So um,
I
I
like an
really,
optimist. I like people that are optimistic. I tell people, hey, look, if you're negative, don't stay around those people. Negativity, man, it's just it can ruin a whole company. You got to get away from it. There's 8 billion people on the planet. Find the people who want to play in your sandbox. If they're negative, kick them out and find someone else that wants to. In my opinion.
it's certainly useful to do your homework, but the problem ultimately, it all comes down to a gut decision whether you feel like you have, even if the worst were to happen, you have the ability to right the ship. So anyway, I really can't begin to tell you how nice this was. and how much I enjoyed this conversation because I really, at the end of the day, the thing that I like the most about what we all get to do is we get to work together and make things, and that's such a fundamental um, aspiration of all humanity. And so I think it's the more people sort of come together in groups like this, and really, I think have a way of mobilizing and changing and disrupting some of the status quo, which I think is holding us back from reaching our full economic and human potential. So,
I totally agree. Listen, I run every day about 5 or 7 miles. I've been doing my ebook every day. And last night, my positive thought, I do a little gig at the when I'm cooling off by the pickleball courts. It's
yeah,
bend, don't break. Be
yeah,
flexible. Bend,
exactly.
bend, but don't break. Get it
That's
done.
right.
You know.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, as we finish up, a couple things. If you're on the construction site, we want you to be safe. Once you get home, be able to have dinner with your spouse, your partner, your wife, your kids, your turtle, whatever. Get some REM sleep and go do it again the next day. Number two, you got to stay hydrated. That's the athlete in me. All right. When you get dehydrated, you get headaches. Get headaches, that's when accidents happen. So you got to make sure, even though the summer temps are, going down, oh man, winter's coming. Put some electrolytes in your water bottle. Make sure you stay liquefied. Number one, you're going to feel much better. Two, you're going to sleep better. And three, you're going to be able to get up and do it another day. And last but not least, hit the like button. We want to make sure that people find this episode out on the web and the algorithms, with YouTube and so forth. They'll find it, and so hit that like button. All right, we want Kevin's story out there. So, Kevin, if I come up to New York, I definitely want to come up and look at one of those reuse projects. Do we have a
Oh,
deal?
that'd be great. Yeah,
I'd
absolutely.
love to go out on a tour, in like I
No,
said.
no, anytime. Really, I love taking people around the city. It's one of my favorite
All
things
right.
to
Well,
do.
I'm gonna take you up on that. And listen, everybody, you got 2 weeks left of 2024. Make the best of it. You got a couple more days of this week. Next week it's a wash. Monday, Tuesday, done. And then the next week will be. But listen, 2025 is going to be an amazing year. Put your seatbelt on. It's not.
Yeah,
The first Q1 is going to be an amazing. I just think it's an amazing time to be alive. I don't even care if it's construction. I just think it's
yeah,
an amazing. We're going to see a transformation if
yeah,
everything goes the way that I think things are going now that the election is over and things are going to happen. It's just an amazing thing to watch. You're going to watch history and you're going to look back 10, 15 years ago. God, I was alive during that time. The transformation that's going to go, and not only in our country, but around the world. It's an amazing thing. So be patient, take one day at a time,
yeah.
and be safe on those construction sites. So Kevin, pleasure meeting you. Say
Take care.
goodbye from the Big Apple.
Yep. Goodbye from the Big Apple.
And I'm going to say goodbye from Sugar Hill, just below the Beaufort Dam on Lake Lanier, about 25 miles north of Atlanta. And everybody, listen, Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, Festivus, whatever. Okay, as they said on site, Festivus, and
Yeah,
enjoy the
yeah,
next couple weeks, family, friends. Recharge your battery because you're going to need it in 2025. And we will see you next time on
great.
another episode of Commercial Construction Coffee Talk. Kevin, thoroughly enjoyed the conversation.
Absolutely. Bye.
Cheers, everybody.
Okay.